again, and this time bigger and better. This competition gathers some of the sharpest young minds in the corners of the nation, leaders, innovators, and thinkers who have risen from the preliminary stages to stand on the national stage, having fought through several sessions of debate, a commendable level of eloquence and research, and which they must be applauded and acknowledged for that. This competition, today we celebrate not just the art of arguments, but the idea of power, the power of ideas. Ideas that shapes our understanding, ideas that drives change in our society, and ideas that brings about positive impact in our everyday lives. Our last and final session for the quarterfinals today is between Team Benue and Team Plateau. Team Plateau being proposition and Team Benue being opposition. And as we all know, we are using the world debate format. Every speaker has 8 minutes to speak, and the reply speakers have 4 minutes. POIs comes from the 2nd minute to the 7th minute. And our motion today states that this House supports the federal government proposal to replace Nigeria's 6-3-3-4 education system with a 12-4 model. Today, we consider a very important topic, which has to do with Nigeria's educational system, with the federal government proposing to shift from the long-standing 6-3-3-4 system to a new 12-4 structure. Now, the question we need to ask ourselves is this reform going to strengthen the educational system, or is it going to weaken it? However, we are going to hear from both perspectives and see how they air their views, and our judges will weigh which has more weight. So I'll welcome our first speaker from the proposing side to come and give us an opening statement.
Today I rise not just to debate a motion, but I rise to protect the futures of millions of Nigerian students who have been shortchanged by an outdated system that no longer reflects the realities of the 21st century. Team Proposition stands unwaveringly to support the federal government's bold proposal of replacing the 6-3-3-4 system of education in Nigeria with a 12-4 model. A reform based on research, data, and the urgent need system. For over 40 years now, since 1982, the educational system in the country has struggled with the 6-3-3-4 system. It has been reviewed, revised, patched, and repatched, yet the results remain the same. Over 20 million out-of-school children, the highest ever in the world. Over 70% of Nigerian graduates who can't defend their results after graduation. And above all, a system
One, two.
Hello. Just here. Yeah.
Today I rise not just to debate a motion, but I rise to protect the futures of millions of Nigerian students who have been shortchanged by an outdated system that no longer reflects the realities of the 21st century. The proposition stands unwaveringly to support the federal government's bold proposal of replacing the 6-3-3-4 system of education in Nigeria with a 12-4 model. A reform based on research, data, and the urgent need to save a failing system. For over 40 years now, since 1982, The educational system in the country has struggled with the 634 system. It has been reviewed, revised, passed, and repassed, yet the result remains the same. Over 20 million out-of-school students, highest ever in the world. Over 50% of Nigerian graduates who can't defend their results after graduation. And above all, a system choking on the exam bottlenecks and overloaded curricula with unprepared students. I therefore ask, for how long shall we keep doing the same thing and expect a different result? Or shall we continue to sit and watch our children fail just because we are afraid to reform a broken model? Indeed, supporting the 12-4 model of education as against the 634 system is not just a policy choice, it is a rescue mission. The Speaker, members of the House, ladies and gentlemen, standing before us in Dam Jacob, the late Speaker of Team Plateau, here to affirm the proposition. This House supports the federal government's proposal to replace the 634 education system in Nigeria with a 12-4 model. But before I delve into arguments properly, I would like to first of all define the key terms involved and at the same time establish this motion from the proposition's perspective. The 634 system of education, simply put, has to do with 6 years of primary education, 3 years of junior secondary school education, 3 years of senior secondary school education with 4 years of university or tertiary education. It was introduced on the 8th of September 1968 and established in 1982. The 12-4 model, on the other hand, gives our children the dignity of 12 years of continuous uninterrupted learning with 4 years of university or tertiary education. I will get back to you. To replace means to exchange something with another. As team proposition, we shall be navigating through 7 arguments, of which I, the late speaker, will be taking the first 3. My first supporter will do justice to the next 4, while my debunker will summarize our points, and at the same time do justice to debunking, contradicting and condemning baseless concepts, of which I'm very sure my opponents must raise in the course of this argument. As a team, we are going to present together with statistics, scenarios, and references to reaffirm our stand on the proposition. Before I proceed, I would like to first of all highlight the objectives of the 634 system of education, and to also address the House on whether they have been able to meet up to this objective or not. The first objective of the 634 system of education is to provide equal educational opportunities for all Nigerian students. This, however, has not been achieved even by 20%, considering the massive number of out-of-school children in Nigeria today. The National Bureau of Statistics in 2023 reported that more than 80% of Nigerian great minds don't go to school. This is typically because of the incessant increment in tuition fees and the repeated investments that parents have to make in students' uniforms, notebooks, and textbooks in the case of the 634 model. Considering this massive failure, a conclusion indeed can be drawn that instead of addressing and giving equal opportunities to all Nigerian students, it has ended up residing educational opportunities to only the elites. Another objective of the 634 education system is to reduce the rate of dropping out of school in Nigeria. This also has not been achieved, as Nigeria's rate of dropping out of school rises by 19.1% every month, totaling about 178,000 students dropping out of school each month. Plateau State government, on the same issue, reported that more than 500 students who took the basic education certificate examination, that parents can't pay for repeated investments in uniforms and others. Kano State government also reported that more than 700 students that took the same basic examination were not able to proceed to senior secondary school. What's your POI? The 634 system of education has been practiced in Nigeria since 1982. It has been implemented, it has been revised, it has been reviewed, but nothing has changed. The 12-4 model gives Nigerian students the dignity of 12 years of uninterrupted learning, and implementing it definitely is a strategic approach as proposed by the federal government of Nigeria. The first reason why Team Proposition supports the government's bold proposal of replacing the 634 system of education in Nigeria is because with the 12-4 model is because the 12-4 model is cost-effective and resource-optimistic. The 634 system allows for repeated investments in students' uniforms, notebooks, textbooks, and the likes. This most of the times causes through school dropouts during transitions from either primary to junior secondary, from either junior secondary to senior secondary, or from senior secondary to university or tertiary level. WAEC in 2023 reported that about 1.6 trillion Nigerian citizens spend nothing less than 500 million each year on school transitions. If the 12-4 model is adopted, it will improve on this. by making sure that funds are available which can be channeled to the development of school laboratories. Libraries aim at better teacher training and performances. The benefit that this will bring to both the system and the students involved is that more funds will be available, which indeed can be helped to develop the sector. Going further, the 6-3-4 system of education should be replaced because it introduces the acquisition of skills too late into the system, most especially around SS1 or SS2. As a result, students graduate with little or no practical experience of what they have been taught with, making them less employable in the future. Victor Franklin, a student from Plateau State, battling on the 6-3-4 system of education. Franklin was introduced to vocational and technical skills in SS2. As a result, he graduated with nothing to do. He ended up becoming a nuisance to the society. The 12-4 model will improve on this by making sure students balance both educational and skills acquisition during their 12 years of basic education. Panel, today this house has a choice. It is either we cling to a system that has failed our children over the years, or we give them a model of 21st century learning. It is either we preserve the past, or we prepare our children for the future. Definitely, with conviction, with evidence, and with deep faith in the future of every Nigerian child, the proposition maintained.
Pure eye speaker.
Must stand. That the motion must indeed stand. And that's why we are concerned about the future and determination of every Nigerian citizen. Proud to propose.
What a powerful argument he had there. Can we welcome our next speaker from opposition?
One, two. 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 One, two.
Honorable judges, before we argue whether Nigeria should move from the 6-3-4 educational system to a 12-form model or not, we should confront the most uncomfortable truth. For decades, millions of children leave school unable to read, unable to calculate, and even unprepared for life. Not because of the numbers in the educational system, but because of failing policies, absent teachers, collapsing classrooms, and a system that ignores them. So I ask everyone in this hall now, are we here again to rearrange the numbers or repair the future of the children? Anyways, panel, before I proceed my argument, permit me to give honor to whom honor is due. That's why I say, good evening, Mr. Chairman, impartial panel of judges, accurate timekeeper, my co-debaters, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I am by name Adubasonia, the lead speaker from side opposition, here to vehemently oppose the motion. This House supports the federal government's proposal to replace Nigeria's 6-3-3-4 education system with a 12-form model. As the lead speaker, I will establish a protocol for my team. I also define the key terms and lay the foundation for today's argument in this match by speaking on the economic and social perspective. My first supporting speaker in the same spirit will buttress our stand on this motion by speaking on poor implementation, insecurity, and also inequality. While my second supporting speaker will rebut all arguments made from side proposition, close the case for our team. Panel of judges and my audience. Before I proceed my argument, permit me to give a key clarification on the question at hand. Here is the truth in one sentence. Changing the 6-3-3-4 educational system to a 12-form model does not fix Nigeria's educational problem. It just spreads failure over the years. Honorable judges and my audience, this motion is not denying the fact that the 12-form model won't benefit Nigeria. But can it succeed where teachers are underpaid, classroom collapse, and even curricula fails? The answer is no. With my motion clarified, permit me to define the key terms. The key terms in this motion are the 6-3-3-4 educational system and the 12-form model. The 6-3-3-4 educational system can be defined as a structure of education where learners spend 6 years in primary school, 3 years in junior secondary school, 3 years in senior secondary school, and then 4 years in tertiary education. While a 12-form model is a structure of education where learners spend 12 years of pre-tertiary education followed by 4 years of tertiary education. Panel of judges and my audience, with my key term clearly defined, permit me to give a historical background of Nigeria's policy on education. The 6-3-3-4 educational system came into being in the year 1982. The reason for its adoption, according to Patrick Eto Odin of Ambrosialis University, was primarily focused on meeting the educational demands of its inhabitants and also equipping the youth with skills to make them self-reliant. 25 years after, Universal Basic Education, UBE, was reintroduced. I'll get back to you. Otherwise known as the 934 system of education. Its aim was to meet the MDGs by 2020. Today, we are in 2025, and I ask the following questions. What has changed? Has it been sincerely implemented? Have our goals been met? Are schools not still struggling under poor infrastructural development, among others? Panel of judges and my audience. The 12-form model, on the other hand, compresses all pre-tertiary education into a 12-year block, similar to the K-12 system used in countries such as the United States. But these countries have far stronger economies, better educational infrastructure, universal internet access, and also highly qualified teachers, conditions we do not currently possess in Nigeria. A system that works well in a developed country does not automatically work in Nigeria. Panel of judges and my audience, this then would lead me to my first angle of my argument, which is the economic perspective. From an economic standpoint, the 12-form proposal is costly, unrealistic, and even wasteful. Switching systems will require rewriting the entire national curriculum, retraining hundreds of thousands of teachers, restructuring school levels, purchasing new learning materials, and also upgrading facilities. At a time like this, where we all know that Nigerian schools lack classrooms, laboratories, libraries, and even chairs, the government should focus more on improving what they have, not building an entire system from the scratch. Panel and my audience, they say charity begins at home, but reverse is the case from the state of my opponents, because in a rural community of Mikang, local government area of Plateau State, around the village of Pitop, public schools face chronic underdevelopment. Our primary school, FCM Primary School, Pitop to be precise, has severely dilapidated classrooms and a shortage of teachers, such that classes are overcrowded. That is, 60 to 70 students are merged in a class because there aren't enough teachers or rooms. The roof leaks when it rains. The toilet is locked because there's no running water. Imagine asking that particular school to adopt a brand new 12-form model of education. Panel and my audience, the government will then need to build additional classrooms at huge cost, recruit and retrain teachers, which adds to salary burden, and also supply new curricula and learning materials for the school. But this state already lacks the basic infrastructure needed for smooth learning. Panel and my audience. Indeed, Plateau State itself has recorded a shortfall of about 4,000 primary level teachers. Meanwhile, there's why money being spent on innovation and renovation of their schools. Panel and my audience, the school still remains in very poor condition. A review of public schools in Plateau State recorded that in the year 2022, that roughly 48% of classrooms in Plateau State are in very poor condition, even after intervention. When the Plateau State government awarded 55 new schools to be built, it underscores how serious infrastructural deficit is. Meanwhile, economically forcing a major structural reform in rural Plateau State, where the schools struggle to provide sufficient learning, sufficient teachers, and even the basic learning materials, risks exacerbating inequalities, and also drains public funds that could be used instead to hire local teachers, repair their classrooms, and even improve retention in the 6-street reform model. Your PY.
Has all the problems that you have listed not related with this 6334 system of education? Yes or no?
The problem is implementation, not the system. I hope you've gotten your answer. Panel of judges and my audience. This then will lead me to my second angle, which is the social angle. From a social perspective, the 6-street reform model is costly, unrealistic, and it will even deepen confusion, inequality, and dropout rates across communities. Many families already struggle with the cost of schooling, and a complete restructuring will mean new assessments, new learning levels, and even new textbooks. No, thank you. That low-income households will struggle to afford. Panel and my audience, also in the rural Plateau State, in communities like Shendam and Pankshin, parents sometimes withdraw their children from school simply because they cannot afford new uniform or even updated textbooks. A full system change will hereby place change for greater pressure on these families and push children, especially girls, out of school. A girl in a rural area completes her primary school education, but her parents cannot afford the 12-year continuous education. Under the 6-street river system of education, she could have finished her junior secondary school and possibly gone into vocational training. Under the 12-4 system, as you all claim, she has to drop out midway because her family cannot sustain the cost, and she is then pushed to early marriage. Panel and my audience, is this what we want for the female child? Is it time to build and strengthen that system so that we all can benefit from it? Panel and my audience, the same social strain is visible in Kano State. We have crowded public schools in areas such as Kumboto and Gwale, operating shifts, and even a minor change in textbook requirements has previously led to temporary drops in attendance. Introducing a completely new structure in such settings will only increase confusion among parents, reduce school participation, and also deepen the gap between households that can adjust and those that cannot, making the reform socially disruptive and unsuitable for Nigeria at this particular moment. Panel of judges and my audience, my team and I have been able to speak on the economic angle, showing how it is economically disruptive. It is disheartening for our own country to adapt a model that we know that it will not fit everybody, to adapt a one-size-fits-all model, to adapt a system of education where learner goes for 12 years without much challenge from our opponents. We're also able to speak on the social angle. Panel and my audience, with this point, proud to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you for those insightful points. Now let's hear from our next speaker from the opposition.
Honorable judges, esteemed audience, and my worthy opponents, my name is Azegbia Precious Ebosereme, the second speaker from Team Plateau, here to propose the motion. This House supports the federal government proposal to replace Nigeria's current 6-3-4 educational system with a 12-4 educational model. Audrey Ozule, the Director General of the United Nations Education, Scientific and Community Organization, said that quality education is the foundation of integrating success. Today we stand at the turning point of Nigeria's educational destiny. For decades, the 6-3-4 educational system has suffered under the weight of outdated structures, unemployable graduates, overstressed curricula, and a widening skill gap. So I ask, how long will we keep preparing students for a world that no longer exists? So we, the proposition, strongly and boldly side with the federal government proposal to replace the 64 educational system with a 12 for educational model of education, a model that will allow national development and a model that aligns with Nigeria's global educational standard. But before I move on to my next point, the first speaker from Team Opposition she came here and she spoke about all the flaws involved in our current educational system. Indeed, is that not why we should replace that system with a 12-4 educational model, one that will align with our global standards? Also, the first speaker from Team Proposition boldly said that in our current educational system, there is collapsed classes, there are no teachers. Should we not integrate from that system to a new one where we have integrated classroom, practical subjects, and so on? Moving on to my full arguments. Firstly, the 12 for educational model provides better foundation for WAEC, NECO, and JAM examinations. One of the major current problems faced in our current educational system is weak foundational background. Students sit for JAM and WAEC examinations with poor comprehension, poor reasoning skills, memorized and not understood notes. This leads to mass failure, poor JAM scores, examination malpractice, and unprepared university graduates. Linking this, a report by the JAM in the last concluded JAM examination shows that over 75% of the 19.4 million students that sat for the JAM examinations scored below 200, not even 200, below 200 out of 400 due to poor foundational background. And also, according to the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, in a report in 2019, shows that over 70% of children cannot read a simple text at the age of 10 due to the flaw of poor foundational background seen in our current 6334 educational system. And also, Nigeria is one of the 10 most countries worldwide that is faced with the worst foundational outcome in terms of skills, a report gotten by the World Bank in the year 2021. So for how long will we keep blaming students for poor examination results when the system itself does not give them enough time to study? My second point here today is that, I'll get back to you. My second point here today is that the 12-form model of education allows for structured and early vocational immersion. One of the major weaknesses seen in our current educational system is lack of practical knowledge. A child finishes his or her basic education having only theory knowledge with little or no hands on practical abilities. Can I have your POI?
Do you suggest that the system is a problem? Doesn't it seem as if implementation of the system is a problem and not the system itself?
Implementation of which system? It is not a system. It is a model. The flawed 654 educational system is the only system here. Our 624 model is not yet implemented. It is just a model that the federal government is proposing. So which implementation of which system here I ask this house? Moving on, the 12-4 educational system allows for vocational skills to be inserted in a child at the early stage of development of that child, which is ages 12 to 18. In the 12 educational model, a child is being exposed to skills they never knew they had. Skills like mechanics, robotics, agriculture, and so on. My opponents here clearly stated that in the 664 educational system, there is high dropout rate because the child does not have money to fund, so they go into vocational skills. But when you adopt a 12-form model, you don't have to go out there and learn vocational skills because those skills are inserted in the curriculum. Those skills are in line with your education. So why go out there and learn skills when you have skills in your educational system? And also, all over the country, in states like Plateau, Abuja, Kano, Kaduna, and Benue, it shows that our country, under the current educational system, teaches practical subjects using chalkboard and paper. You can imagine teaching computer studies with chalkboard and paper, and that child has not ever seen a computer in his life.
POI speaker.
I'll get back to you. And you say turn on the computer. How would they know? Because they have never seen that thing. And that is why this leads to a massive failure in the JAM exam, because it is practical and computer based. Can I have your POI?
What administrative architecture manages the nationwide restructuring you are proposing?
Indeed, there is a nationwide infrastructure I'm talking about. What happened to the National Ministry of Education? What happened to the Board of Directors? And what happened to other individuals in the country that have been given that mantle of proposing this model? As the motion has stated, the federal government proposal, so they will take care of the infrastructure. Another point I'll bring to this house here today is that the 12-year structures reduces psychological pressure and also reduces wrong career choices. You can imagine a child in junior secondary school class 3 at the age of just 12 or 13 being forced to choose a life path, whether it is arts, sciences, or commercial, with little or no technical guidance. Please tell me, how do you expect that child to know where he or she is diving towards in life? How do you expect that child to make an informed decision? Obviously, that leads to wrong career choices. And also, you can imagine Emeka, a young boy, his mother forcing him to study science, because that is the class for serious students. Emeka hates calculations.
POI speaker.
No, thank you. He hates calculations and he does not even know anything about that class. That is not his desire. Emeka will obviously go to that class and become a failure, increasing to the rate of unemployment and ideal or useless people in our society today. But with the top-up model of educational system, which allows the child to reach ages 17 to 18 before he or she makes a career choice, that is when the brain is more developed, that child is more mature, that child has been career cancelled, that child has been exposed to real-world experiences. So indeed, at that age of 17 to 18, the child is able to make an informed decision. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, the question before us is simple. For how long do we cling to an educational system that has failed us for millions? Or do we embrace a system that gives the students the future they desire? So we confidently, boldly, and decisively propose the motion. Thank you.
We'll introduce our next speaker from the opposition.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, panel of judges, accurate timekeeper, my co-debaters, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Standing before you is none other than Faith Dixon Edo, the chief supporting speaker of the opposing team, here to vehemently oppose the motion. This house supports the federal government's proposal to replace Nigeria's 6334 system with a 12-4 model. Before I set the ball rolling, I listened carefully to the chief supporting speaker of the proposing team, and she's trying to imply that if there is a crack in the foundation of a system, we should replace it. Then replace what? Because in the real life, in construction, when a system is cracked, when a building is cracked, you just don't tear it down because there is a crack. You repair it, you build it up, you straighten what already exists. In fact, replacing a foundation without fixing the structural weaknesses poses an even faster way to a bigger destruction. Nigeria's educational problems are not brought about by the 634 system, my dearest opponents. It is brought about by incompetent builders. You try to say that we are operating in the 20th century, that we are not operating in the 21st century because we are using the 634 system. You are just trying to say that you regret being a product of the 634 system. Instead, Nigeria is the one operating in the 20th century in terms of inconsistent funding, in terms of poor accountability. Honorable judges, before we talk about replacing Nigeria's educational system, let us confront a simple but uncomfortable truth. You cannot remodel a house that is still on fire. Yet that is exactly what this proposal attempts to do. They are matching with fallacy, but we are matching with reality. They are trying to make us admire the paint on the walls. But we, the opposition, are trying to make you to look at the foundation. The real Nigeria, a place where the structure cannot stand by ignoring the cracks don't exist. First, insecurity. Panel and my audience, Nigeria is bleeding. Not because of lack of dreams, not because of lack of ideas, but because of insecurity.
May I speak now?
Yes, your POI.
Since you oppose the 12-4 model, can you give this house an alternative you propose to fix the crisis? Since you oppose the 12-4 model, what alternative do you propose to this house to fix the crisis and problems our educational system faces?
Please don't get so strong. We are not opposing the 12-4 model. We are opposing change without direction. And for the alternative you talk about, we propose strengthening funding and infrastructure. There should be teacher training and motivation. Before the proposition comes up here to tell us the magical ways the 12-4 model can fix Nigeria's education system, let us ask ourselves, how can classroom reform succeed in a state where the classrooms themselves are not safe to stay in? Because Plateau State, their very own backyard, is one of the epicenters of insecurity in Nigeria today. Plateau State, their own homeland, has felt the sting of this reality. Ladies and gentlemen, it is quite apparent that my opponents don't know what goes on in their state, so let me make you wiser. In January 2024, Plateau State experienced the Mango massacre. This left over 50 people killed, thousands of people were displaced. Schools were shut down, and yet, in the midst of all these realities, the proposition has the audacity to stand there and tell us that the 12-4 model will flourish. And we, the opposing team, can't help but ask, flourish where? Flourish where exactly? In communities where children cannot sit safely and learn because of the fear of gunfire echoing in the distance. I ask the proposition, when students are running for safety, who will be running to school? If the communities are burning, how can a new curriculum be built on ashes? If students cannot sleep safely at night, how can they learn safely by morning? The proposition is trying to build a future, and they have not yet secured the children they are building it for. Let me make this very clear to everyone. If Nigeria adopts the 12-4 model, the children of the future should better learn how to fly, because the proposition is removing the ground from under their feet.
POI speaker.
Yes, your POI.
Since 1982, the 634 system of education has failed us. You are talking about replacing or building on the foundation. How can we do that? How realistic is that? Since 1982, for 40 years.
Can you look at the problem here? They are trying to make Nigeria to import the roof, and we have not even started the foundation. They are talking about modernization, but modernization without stability is just chaos wearing perfume. Second, poor implementation. I listened to the first speaker of the proposing team, and he said that the 634 system is failing. But have you ever asked yourself why that system is failing? Because of Nigeria's chronic failure to implement even minor educational policies. The truth of the matter is that Nigeria does not have an implementation problem. Nigeria is an implementation problem. Consider the Universal Basic Educational Policy, UBE, that was meant to provide free and compulsory education for everybody. Still never fully implemented. The 6334 system itself, never fully funded, never completed, never implemented the way it ought to be. And yet, in the midst of all these realities, the proposition insists, they persist, that we should introduce a more complex, a more confusing structure that we don't fully understand. When this is the same Nigeria, where we struggle with leaks and irregularities in external examinations. This is the same Nigeria, where we struggle to provide chairs for many primary schools. This is the same Nigeria, where we still battle with teacher shortages. Do you know what? I laugh at my opponent's inability to distinguish between fallacy and reality, because I believe all of us here are educated people to know that if you give a world-class car to an under-trained driver, a driver that has no training, it will crash. The same way that if you give an excellent model to a nation with poor accountability, with inconsistent monitoring, with chronic underfunding, it will still collapse. The problem has never been the blueprints, it has always been the builders. This proposition expects Nigeria to succeed, not because it is ready, but because the paper looks nice. That is not policy. That is not reform. That is what my team and I call wishful thinking. What do we call it? We call it wishful thinking. Third, inequality. We keep chanting and shouting, united we stand, divided we fall. But the truth of the matter is that Nigeria is already a nation fractured by inequality. A place where the richest 10% send their children to private schools with modern labs, with private tutors, with enough textbooks, and the poorest 50%, what happens to them? They walk miles to school. They pray for electricity. The truth of the matter is that the 12-4 model will widen the gap. Honorable judges, we can't introduce a model where in the classrooms are like war zones. We can't introduce a model where textbooks have been replaced by bullets. This house must accept the truth, and we must not push our children into darkness, because a nation that cannot carry a candle should not attempt to hold a chandelier. Think about this, my opponents. With this, I end my argument. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, that was a powerful presentation from proposition. Now, can we have our next speaker from opposition?
Honorable Speaker, Nigeria cannot build a 21st century future with a 20th century education tool. For decades now, the 6-3-3-4 education system has been like a building with a cracked foundation, patched, repainted, restructured, but never truly rebuilt. And what has been the outcome? Overloaded curriculum, underprepared graduates, and skills that do not match the demands of the modern world. Throughout these debates, we on the proposition bench have shown you one truth, that no nation ever becomes ready for progress by standing still. The 6-3-3-4 system of education has failed to reflect the skills, structure, and realities of the world our children must compete in. The lead speaker of side opposition said that the objective of the 6-3-3-4 system was to equip students with vocational skills. But let us be true to ourselves. Has that objective been fully met? The second speaker talked about insecurity. But let me remind this house that insecurity is a global problem, not caused by the 12-4 model. The first speaker also talked about poor infrastructure of schools in the rural areas. That is exactly why the 12-4 model should be implemented, because it funds infrastructure for 12 continuous years without disruption and transitions, aiding the less fortunate in the rural areas. Panel of judges, my name is Okoro Bethel, the third speaker from Team Plateau, here to propose the motion. This house supports the federal government's proposal to replace the 6-3-3-4 education system with a 12-4 model. The 6-3-3-4 model breaks the child's learning into too many pieces. It creates 4 transitions, 4 disruptions, and 4 opportunities for the child to fall through the cracks. But with the 12-4 model, however, career guidance becomes part of the journey and not just an emergency decision. Students mature emotionally, academically, and socially before entering the final 4-year specialization stage. Better career guidance, which fixes the wrong placement of students into the science, arts, and technical tracks. The extended 12-year phase allows for proper assessment and maturity before specialization, which solves the current problem we face, where students enter the wrong tracks and struggle academically. In 2010, the then President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, called the 6-3-3-4 system a failure because the curriculum objectives had not been met yet. So I ask this house, should education feel like climbing a staircase full of missing steps? Isn't it wiser to let a child discover who they are first before deciding?
POI speaker.
I'll get back to you. For 40 years now, we have recycled the same structure. A structure that was introduced with hope, but has delivered a reality we can no longer ignore. Millions of dropouts, underprepared graduates, fragmented learning, and a system that moves them forward in age and not in ability. Let me have your POI.
If the 6-3-3-4 system failed, what makes you think the 12-4 will flourish?
We can take examples from countries like Japan, Finland, and South Korea, who have implemented uninterrupted 12 years and longer years of learning. UNESCO reports that they record the world's lowest rate of dropouts. The 12-4 model reduces school dropouts, according to the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. The 6334 system transition points are where students drop out of school the most. But the 12-4 model fixes these transition bottlenecks and promotes longer and continuous schooling. As Dr. Amina Haruna, an education policy analyst in the year 2023, emphasized that countries that implement longer and uninterrupted years of learning, such as Finland, Korea, Japan, have recorded the world's lowest rate of out-of-school children. Also, according to the United Nations International Children Emergency Fund, UNICEF, Nigeria still has one of the world's highest rates of out-of-school children. But the federal government's proposal in 2025 showed that the 12-4 model will provide 12 uninterrupted years of learning of basic education and will reduce dropouts by preventing educational barriers. I know that Team Opposition said that we should focus on improving the 6334 system and not replacing it with the 12-4 model. But let me remind this House that you do not repaint a cracked foundation. Rather, you rebuild it. The 6334 system of education has structural defects that no amount of patching can fix. You do not fix a system whose very foundation and structure produces failure. Improvement without restructuring, I assure this House, is simply repeating mistakes more neatly. Professor Florence Ajike from the University of Lagos called the 6334 system a failure because of lack of implementation and poor facilities. According to the National Institutes for Educational Planning and Administration, NEPA, Nigeria, no child learns confidently in a system which is designed around frequent disruption. Ladies and gentlemen, the opposition fear the cost of change, but they never calculate the cost of failure. They ask for caution, but we in proposition ask for vision. They ask for delay, but we ask for progress. They defend the past, but we defend the future. Ladies and gentlemen, this debate is not just between the 6334 system and the 12-4 model. It is between yesterday and today. It is between the fear of change and the courage to build a stronger generation. We in proposition rise for a system that promotes the future of the children, not the one that protects and recycles their failures. If we claim to value the future of our children, then why should we fear a reform that is designed to strengthen their future? If we truly love the future of our children, I urge this House to stand with the government's proposal. Second speaker from Team Proposition talked about how hard it is to implement the 12-4 model. But then, let me counter her argument. If the federal government implements the 12-4 model, implementing it will aid the future of our children. Should we move backward just because of implementation alone? If we truly love and value the future of our children, I urge this House to stand on the threshold of reform and rebirth. I urge this House to side the federal government's proposal to replace the 6334 education system with a 12-4 model. I urge this House to stand with Team Proposition, proud to propose the motion. Thank you.
What a powerful and convincing argument. Let's keep the momentum as we welcome our next speaker from opposition.
Standing on the already established protocol by my lead speaker, I am Peter Atai Ebenezer, the second supporting speaker of debate team Benue. All facts presented by the first speaker remain. Honorable judges, I listened carefully to the side proposition, and I must confess, I was impressed. Impressed by how confidently they built their entire arguments on foundations that simply cannot exist. Their presentation was passionate, yes, but let me tell you, passion without proof is noise. And for the time they have stood here, they have been making noise. They attempt to replace the 6334 model with 6334 system with the 12-4 model. Yet, they have not answered the simplest, most embarrassing question. If Nigeria struggles in maintaining the classrooms it already owns, what makes them think it can successfully run the ones they are still drawing on paper? The second supporting speaker The first supporting speaker spoke that it will make Nigeria to be globally competitive. But I ask, how? How? How will it make us globally competitive? Because let me tell you, global competitiveness is built on quality preparation, investment, and stability. If you stretch the school curriculum, does that make you think that you are going to become successful in life? Countries like the third speaker spoke, like Finland, Canada, Japan, Singapore, did not rise by stretching their curriculum. They rose by ensuring every student, every teacher, and every classroom had what they needed to succeed. Nigeria, on the other hand, is suffering and struggling with overcrowded classrooms, underfunded schools, underpaid teachers, missing laboratories, inconsistent curricula, and strikes. Honorable judges, permit me to some of the statements that they made. The team proposition spoke that the 6334 system is outdated. As my second speaker said, and I quote, modernization without stability is chaos. If you change this system, I assure you, you will throw Nigeria into monotony, confusion, and hopelessness. You called it a failing system. But let me bring to your notice, you said that it has not been fully implemented. And I ask, is it the fault of the system that it has not been fully implemented? Or the fault of those who are implementing it?
POI speaker.
Your POI.
The system has not been implemented because of its disruptions and other breakthroughs. How can you address the house that the 2-4 model will not better on this disruption?
Your fact is not stable. It has not been implemented because of those who are implementing it, not because of the disruptions. I proceed with my argument. You called it a rescue mission, but let me ask you, who are you rescuing? Are you rescuing those who are in the rural villages? Those who won't have the opportunity to come back to school because a more extravagant financial situation is placed upon their parents? Who are you actually rescuing? They spoke about the dropout rates. Now, let me tell you, the UNICEF said that about 20.2 million Nigerians are out of school. But let's be honest. Is it because they have to spend 6 years in primary school, 3 years in junior secondary school, 3 years in senior secondary school, and 4 years in the tertiary institution? Or because their parents cannot afford uniforms, textbooks, transportation, or even food? My proponents, I will ask you, how will changing the structure of the education keep a child that has dropped out, a hungry child in school? Or how will changing the structure keep a child in Kano who farms before he comes to school from dropping out? It won't. Because I tell you, the cause of dropout rate has nothing to do with the educational structure. In fact, my honorable judges, this has revealed the deepest flaw in their arguments. Because if the cause is actually the dropout rate, then the 12-4 model is actually the worst
POI speaker
solution. I reject your POI. Now let me tell you something. A child in Zamfara who must help her mother before she comes to school in the market will not magically return to school if the government changes the curriculum. If the government changes the standard of education, she will come back only if education is made cheaper, made safer, and more supported. They spoke about the skill acquisition promotion. Now I ask you, how will the 12-4 model increase that? Because now, you spoke about the transitioning between the JSS3, and the SS1. There is a space of time that is given to each and every student, and with that, they can learn every vocational skill. And in fact, the second speaker spoke that it will reduce the learning of vocational skills. But let me ask you, you standing here, is it not as a result of being a vocationalist? You are a debater. It is a vocational skill. Are you not a product of the 6334 system? Well, and here you come to say that it will fail. I say no. They spoke about the 20th century learning, that is what we are operating in. Now, let me tell you, the 20th century learning is based on the industrial era. And the industrial era is based on the arrangement of chairs in columns and in rows. Now, let me show you what we'll do to the 12 if the 12-4 model is adopted. The government will have to come back to classrooms, make sure that everything is disorganized so that students can be able to learn according to the 21st model. But that's not what we want. They spoke about poor fundamental background. That is, they are trying to say that students will have more time to master their subjects if the 12th form model is adopted. But I ask, how? Forcing students through a 12-year path will not sharpen their minds. It will only crush their spirits. Imagine you as a student writing your common entrance, your basic, your WAEC, your NECO, and your JAM at the end of 12 years. I tell you, my proponents, you will collapse under tension of examination. And that's the truth. We won't tell you the lie. They spoke about that the transition, they spoke about that it will not solve vocational skill. I repeat this because the transition, and I say again, is as a result so that the people in JSS3 will have more time to master their subjects. I proceed with my argument. Now, let me tell you the things that will happen. If the 12th model is not is adopted, then students will become mass failures. Let me explain. Because the 12th form model will wait until the final examination just for them to discover that their students are actually lagging behind in some points. Most failures in university don't come about because they don't have enough time to learn in school. They come about because they actually never understood the fundamentals of which the 12th form model will not fix. In fact, it will greaten the problem. Imagine a football team, a soccer team. If the coach waits until the final match of the season to discover that his players cannot pass or shoot properly, they would have spent time in the gym, working towards bodily exercise. They might have spent time watching their opponents in action, whereas the real issue is laid unattended to. By the time these flaws are noticed, the damage is already done, and the time to fix them is already over. With this, we, the opposition, say, let the motion fall. Thank you. Hey, sorry.
What an engaging discussion we have witnessed right now. Now it is time for our reply speech. We are going to have our reply speaker from the opposition first, then our proposition. And remember, you have 4 minutes, and in this session, there are no POIs. So can we have our reply speaker from opposition?
Panel, I am back on stage. Summarize our arguments and take a firm stand of my team in our today's debate. Honorable judges and my audience, after everything we've heard today, one truth stands tall. The proposition is asking Nigeria to run before they can even crow. They have not shown understanding of our reality, only admiration for their theory. Panel and my audience, they told you that the 12th form model will make us globally competitive. But I ask, competitive with what? Competitive with teachers who leave the profession because they cannot survive on the system. Children who miss weeks of learning because their communities are unsafe. My opponents, I would love to let you know that global competitiveness does not mean copy and paste. Other countries excel because they have thrived, they have started, they failed, they still picked up courage and started again, and they are where they are today. When has the educational system turned trading second-hand clothes? Panel and my audience, we, the opponents of this motion, sincerely stand to oppose this motion, saying that global competitiveness does not grow on broken ground. They also told you, honorable judges, that the 12th form model reduces dropouts. But honorable judges and my audience, dropout rate rises when school becomes more expensive. Parents cannot sustain long educational cycles. Insecurity pushes students away, and also inequality deepens. The 12th form model pours fuel on all these. Dropouts don't reduce in chaos, they multiply. They told you that this model will fix the qualitative gap, but I asked how? A new structure does not magically create new teachers, new training, or even new incentives. It is like repainting a collapsing wall and calling it renovation. Structure does not create equality, investment does. And the proposition has shown zero plan for that. What do we, the opponents of this motion, show you? We showed you 3 undeniable truths. 1. Poor implementation destroys any good policy. No matter how that policy is, panel and my audience, my opponents, you can call it 12-4, call it 10-6, call it 22-2. As far as the implementation is poor, the educational system cannot progress. Panel and my audience, it is evident that for any infrastructural, for any growth in any educational function, any educational aspect, the implementation must be good. Our schools are underfunded, our teachers are unpaid, our classes are collapsing, and you come here to tell us we should adapt a brand new model. My opponent, are you sure of what you're saying? I need you to confirm your fact before you come and stand on this stage, so you not confuse the Nigeria and you not put millions of children's life as experiments, because it will be a failed experiment. Panel and audience, we also showed you how insecurity makes long educational pathways unrealistic. The rate of insecurity in our community is alarming, and we should focus more on amending it rather than diverting into other models. We also showed you how the 12-4 widens inequality between the well-resourced and the under-resourced schools, between the families that can adjust and those that cannot. Panel and my audience, the proposing team spent the entire debate building castles on the air, forgetting that real children live on real soil. They debated in Nigeria they imagined. We debated the Nigeria that exists. And in the real Nigeria, the 12-4 system is unworkable. The 12-4 system is unsafe. The 12-4 system is unequal. And most of all, it is not ready for implementation. Policy is not poetry. Children are not experiments. And education is not gambling. This house cannot, will not, and must not support a system that is heavier than the children, harsher on the poor, and blind to insecurity in our communities. Panel and my audience, the proposing team were confident in their arguments, but confidence without understanding the motion is confusion. And today that confusion has been exposed. For this reason, honorable judges, the opposition wins the case. Case closed.
Thank you very much. Now, reply speaker from proposition.
Version of what my teammates and I have earlier presented. But before I go further, I would like to first of all call the attention of this honorable house to the opposition's flows. More
the day. We've talked about power foundation, we've talked about global competitiveness, we've talked about cost-effective and resource optimization, we've talked about skills acquisition, and many others. Indeed, the 634 system of education has failed us. The implementation, since it cannot be carried out for over 40 years back, when then will that be completed? Definitely. Also, the team opposition raised points like the 12-4 system of education does not align Nigeria with global standard. But I'd like to reaffirm to this House that it's because of the 634 model of education that Nigerian students cannot compete with their counterparts from other parts of the world, as reported by the National Bureau of Statistics. With this, team opposition are confident in the future of every Nigerian child. It's time to tell every Nigerian child that your dream matters, your future matters, and will not fail you again. With conviction, with clarity, and with evidence, let the proposition stand. Proud to propose.
Thank you, our debaters, for a very insightful and thoughtful, debate session. And now we are going to hand over to our judges to analyze and evaluate the debate and tell us who won. But before that, we're going for a break. And don't go far, we'll be right back.
Journey like no other to expand your horizon, ignite your curiosity, and unleash your full potential beyond classroom. Welcome to Niger Educational TV.
Wait, what is this all about?
Niger Educational TV is not just a channel, it's an initiative brought to you by Bringing on Africa in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Education with a mission to provide inclusive and equitable quality education for all. Whether you're a student looking to enhance your learning or a parent concerned with what your word watch, Niger Educational TV got you covered.
Dive into our fascinating shows like live debates, quiz, documentaries, and lots more, all aligned with the UNESCO agenda.
So why wait? Tune in to Niger Educational TV today by subscribing to our YouTube channel and follow us on all our social media platforms to be entertained. Hey Nigerians, are you ready to embark on an educational journey like no other to expand your horizon, ignite your curiosity, and unleash your full potential beyond classroom? Welcome to Niger Educational TV.
Wait, what is this all about?
Niger Educational TV is not just a channel, it's an initiative brought to you by Bringing on Africa in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Education with a mission to provide inclusive and equitable quality education for all. Whether you're a student looking to enhance your learning or a parent concerned with what your word watch, Niger Educational TV got you covered.
Dive into our fascinating shows like live debates, quiz.
Small. Okay. Good day once more. I'll be brief with the summary of this debate. We can see that it's been very explosive from both teams. The land they've met before, so maybe that's why both of them were so prepared and at once one another's jugular. I'll pick one area of clash, which is the topic itself. There are many questions from the opposition against the proposition which were not answered. The many hows, the many whos were not answered properly or were not even answered by the proposition. That's implementation. That's the first one. Then one area of weak point of the opposition is this is a national intention to change, to replace. It is not localized to Plateau State alone. The opposition were hammering on Plateau, as if it is only Plateau that want to implement it. It's supposed to be national. It should spread all over the country, not only one state. So that's the area I am particular about, just to summarize it. But for me, from my own opinion, I gave it to Team Benue.
So I'll be very brief to summarize mine. For me, the team that won from my own side is Team Benue State above Team Plateau State. That's opposition won. So I'll just summarize my decision. So opposition wins because they were able to prove that Nigerian education failure is rooted in implementation, the funding gaps, and the structural weakness. So therefore, changing the system, the 6334 system to a 124 system does not still resolve the actual problem, because proposition never showed how this model will solve those practical constraints. That there are a lot of things that came into the debate, but in summary, right? So opposition engaged the core problem holistically and logically to show you that changing the system does not automatically make a child in rural area to begin to go to school because new system have been changed. So those structural problems needs to be changed, and proposition never showed us how the new system is going to come up to just change the structural problem just by telling us, well, it's outdated since 1982 and all of that, so we need to bring in a new system and all of it. There was other things that happened, but in summary, this is why I had team opposition above team proposition. Thank you.
So for my own judgment, good day everyone. Yeah, so for my own judgment, I would also put opposition against proposition, and the main reason is due to the fact of like the basis of the argument, which was what team opposition was carrying. Essentially, it was on the basis of implementation, which was actually the good on their part, because when they came in, they were like, the educational system within Nigeria is already bad itself. Not because of the system that exists, but because of the people that drive the system. So even if you bring in a new system to try and change how the education works in Nigeria, you're not necessarily fixing the main point of contention, which is the educational system overall. So you can change the system, you can change how the education works in of itself. But the fact that you've not actually dealt with the core issue, which is actually the funding, the underfunding of the educational system, the overcrowding of schools, poor facilities and so on. Even if you bring this system to, that problem is still going to exist despite anything you're trying to solve. So rather than trying to bring in a new system that will even overstress the system, why not just work with the system you already have and try to implement from the grassroots up? Because they already now stated that the system, the 12-4 system, is not even bad, but because you're going to bring it in a undeveloped in an undeveloped environment, it's going to now become a even worse system, causing stress on both students, teachers, and so on. So with this point, I would say Team Benue won.
Hey Nigerians, are you ready to embark on an educational journey like no other? To expand your horizon, ignite your curiosity, and unleash your full potential beyond classroom? Welcome to Niger Educational TV.
Wait, what is this all about?
Niger Educational TV is not just a channel, it's an initiative brought to you by Bringing On Africa in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Education, with a mission to provide inclusive and equitable quality education for all. Whether you're a student looking to enhance your learning or a parent concerned with what your word watch, Niger Educational TV got you covered.
Dive into our fascinating shows like live debate, quiz, documentaries, and lots more, all aligned with the UNESCO agenda.
So why wait? Tune in to Niger Educational TV today by subscribing to our YouTube channel and follow us on all our social media platforms to be entertained.